episode of Grab Them by the Pod is brought to you by the letter P and the number 1. Now here's your hosts, Jesse and Kevin.
What a special treat to have a very big celebrity guest, a very terrific celebrity guest, as our president would say. Elmo, why are you here?
Elmo is very sad because Elmo just found out that Elmo might not have a job anymore.
Oh no, what's happening, Elmo?
Elmo heard that President Trump wants to cut funding to the channel that Elmo is on.
Good thing you're on HBO now, so it's not a problem anymore.
True story.
Anyway, folks, it's not really Elmo, but yes, we are sad. Anybody who grew up in, say, the 1970s through the 2000s probably spent some time watching Sesame Street.
And Mr. Rogers and a whole bunch of stuff.
Right, and with the proposed Trump budget, stands to have some major cuts to things like the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which, of course, is funding the funder of PBS, which is where, prior to HBO, Sesame Street was located.
Yeah, this is going to be a mess. They came out with the budget late last week, and they're cutting everything, it seems, except for military, homeland security. So let's just go through a couple of things quickly. We could be here all day, literally going through everything that's being cut. So in the Department of Education, it's being cut by $9 billion, or 13.5% of its budget. I mean, you're a teacher. That must mean a lot to you.
Yeah, it does. And the idea that education in such a critical time would be cut at all, and seeing it firsthand and seeing the deficits that students in especially the cities of the United States are facing, this is critical. It's devastating. One of the programs that stands to be cut under the Trump budget would be the Striving Readers program, which attempts to raise literacy levels at Title I middle and high schools across the country. And for those of you that maybe don't know, Title I generally refers to schools that are serving populations that are impoverished or have other needs. So this program identifies scientifically based research practices and strategies to improve adolescent reading skills. And it seems kind of ironic to me, since the president himself could probably have benefited from a program like this.
That's putting it mildly. They're cutting $12.6 billion out of HHS. It's a lot of the stuff that I do work with, so I'm going to notice definitely a cut there. It's 16.2% of the budget. National Institute of Health, $5.8 billion. The EPA, $2.6 billion, which I believe the EPA is like 0.2% of the overall budget. It's ridiculous. The State Department, $11 billion. I actually heard John Oliver say last night that, and I agree with him, that these aren't the things you cut to save money. These are the things you cut to say screw you to somebody, because in the long run, the money allocated goes a long way, but it doesn't make much difference if you cut it to add it to the budget, to the defense budget.
Right, and like cuts to the State Department. Forget diplomacy. Let's just have more war, right? And as I'm sure we'll talk later, right, the defense spending budget has increased. So let's cut diplomacy. Let's cut things, as you said, that seem to just be out of spite or a slap in the face, rather than cut things that might actually improve the country.
And let's just go through a couple of the programs. Again, there's so many programs being cut or eliminated. It's you'd be here all day. So some of the things that are being cut: programs supporting before and after schools programs. That's again something that you're going to see in your profession. The Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy, that funds clean energy research. Who needs clean energy when we have coal, right? That's fine.
Right.
Block grants that partly fund Meals on Wheels. That's been a big thing. And yes, it's not all the money that goes to Meals on Wheels, but it's a chunk. And why would you get rid of that? PBS, NPR, basically public broadcasting, National Endowment of the Arts, National Endowments for Humanities. The thing that upsets me with all this being cut, we hear people like Spicer, we hear a lot of the different people in the administration say things like, the coal miner in West Virginia who is struggling to pay rent doesn't care about PBS. That's the definition of a coastal elite. They blame us on that, but you're basically saying because this person's a blue-collar worker that they can't enjoy the arts or they can't enjoy public radio. It's ridiculous.
I'm going to guess that their kids watched Sesame Street. It's probably, something that they were raised on. So you're right. You're absolutely right. The whole idea of the Eastern elites, that's an example. And the Trump administration is playing that card right now. So I don't buy it either. And the idea, I'm partial. I teach social studies. It's part of the humanities. If we lose sight of teaching and learning and experiencing looking into our past and how it connects together as a society, then we're really giving up on something important. And I hate to see us go in that opposite direction. But also, just before we go on, I want to mention the EPA cuts, right? Something that stood out to me is the idea that most people consider the EPA just to be the climate change watchdog, but they do so much more than that. They actually, the more day-to-day activity, according to the New York Times article by Coral Davenport, most people think of it as the climate change, trying to curb climate change and regulate smokestacks. But more of what they do is respond to daily emergencies in the states. Things like the 2014 perfume factory fire right here in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where they helped to come in and clean up and regulate and get that back in order. So if we cut the 3,200 jobs that are proposed under this budget to the EPA, what does that do when we have these emergency situations? We're still reeling from the Flint, Michigan water crisis. How dare we cut the EPA now?
And let's be honest, working for the EPA sucks normally because it's almost impossible to win with everything that's going on. You're constantly fighting an uphill battle. And if you take away $2.6 billion, it's the boulder's going to be rolling down on you. You're not fighting up the hill anymore. You've lost. And it's ridiculous. And again, it sounds so strange to say that $2.6 billion is a drop in the bucket. But when you see the military getting $500+ billion, you really, I used to be a lobbyist, and I would go to Congress and ask for $5 million for what we were looking for, and they would laugh at us because it was so little compared to what other people got. And it's the same thing here, relatively speaking. And those are just the things that are being eliminated. There are also things that are being cut. So the USDA water and wastewater loan and grant program, again, who needs clear water? Let the runoff just go on in, and God knows what you're drinking.
See Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, and I think, was it that scene in Aaron Brockovich where the people were like, oh, it's a big deal, the water. Then she gives them a glass of water from where they were. It's like, oh, go ahead and drink, and it's the truth. It doesn't seem like a big deal when you don't live there. It's not your water.
Right. Up close and personal changes a lot of things.
I don't mean to beat a dead horse in the ground, but the Trump administration just gives us so many opportunities that 20 Department of Education programs are going to be reduced or eliminated. And again, this is your livelihood, this is your living, and it's going to be that much more difficult because of this.
And there looks to be cuts to the FEMA state and local grant funding by $667 million. This is the worst thing to happen to FEMA since the 2005 Katrina disaster. The brownies doing a heck of a job.
And good job next time or good luck next time it's in your backyard and you need that. And oops, sure, nothing's going to happen at the White House. Nothing's going to happen. There's not going to be a flood in New York City. There are other things going to happen there, but these are things that Trump himself doesn't necessarily have to worry about. But there's a lot of things out there that a lot of people who voted for him do have to worry about. The people who live around, say, the Mississippi River that are going to be flooded, I bet you a lot of them voted for Donald Trump. And next time there's a national disaster because their house is underwater, sorry, we're not going to have enough money to come help you because we got these FEMA programs.
Right. They're so quick to forget. And honestly, there's a disconnect between on the ground and their knowledge of how the system works. Voting for Trump because you feel that he represents your blue collar middle America values, but you don't realize that his finger is on the button that controls the programs that would help you in these situations that you are facing year after year.
This budget, much like Trump Care, if we're going to call it that, I've said we wouldn't call that in the past, the American Health Care Act, these are the things that are going to actually hurt the people who voted for Trump. It's ridiculous. It's like he did a Jedi mind trick and got the people to vote against what's best for them. And I guess that's the paradox of participation I learned in Poli-Sci 101. The people in need of most change do the least to get it. And it's going to be sad. It's sad now because you can see what's coming down the pike, and it's going to be even sadder when this becomes a reality.
Perhaps that's what we're here for, Jess, to remind people of how their system of government actually works. Hey, if that's the least we can do, then I'm happy to do it.
You may not agree with us politically, but listen to us. You may learn a thing or two, and I said, maybe you guys send us a message. Maybe we'll learn something from you. So those are a lot of the things that are being cut. But no, there are some things that are getting more money. The Defense Department is going to be getting $574 billion. That's more than $500 billion. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot. And look, it's already 54% of the overall budget. So when we are looking to make cuts somewhere, I don't want to say, and trust me, I appreciate those who serve this country across the board in our military, but maybe we should be looking for ways that we could limit the spending militarily by using more diplomacy, right? We're looking to spend almost $79 billion in Veterans Affairs. Now, again, as I said, I love our veterans. I'm the son of a veteran. But if we had fewer wars, if we were out there, less provocating of wars around the world, we would have fewer veterans to pay for later on. So maybe there's some ways here that we could reduce our spending.
Yeah, and Trump never shuts up about there being like, only like 120 ships. It's like it's as close as we were to World War I levels. But if you got another 100 ships, another 100 battleships, or I don't know, whatever they would have, is that going to change anything? No, because we're not having these giant naval battles anymore. We're not having the conventional wars we used to have. You buy more planes, you buy more boats. It's not going to do anything to stop terrorists. I mean, maybe they're going to take that money and buy a bazillion drones, but wasn't Trump against just blowing up people left and right? It's money. It's not about how much money you have. It's how you're using it.
Jesse, somewhere Alfred T. Mahan and Chester Nimitz are rolling over in their grave. How dare you say that we shouldn't build more ships? But I agree, right? We don't need to fight the wars the same way we used to. So that's apples and oranges.
And going back to what you were saying, the Veterans Affairs is getting basically $79 billion more. And again, our veterans are in need. But again, do they need more money, or do you just need to have someone competent running the organization? Because a lot of the problems the VA is having is it's just incompetence left and right and how things are going on. And I honestly don't know whether they're really in need of a lot more money or just somebody who has a brain in their head and can right the ship.
If we can cut back on some of that corruption in our government and more efficiency at the levels of these programs run, we could probably save money right there.
It's all about saving money, except for when it comes to Trump and spending it on the things he really likes. He wants to cut the budget where he says he's going to save us money, but just throw it into more wars, more homeland security, all that stuff. And then don't forget the wall that Mexico is going to be paying for, except for we are. There's about $2.6 billion put together to build the wall until Mexico decides to pay for it. And they started in the last week or so accepting proposals for this wall and some specifications. It has to be at least 18 feet, but they really want it to be like 30 feet tall. Now, we're both from New England Red Sox fans. How tall did you say the Green Monster was?
I believe it's about 37 feet. So this is just shy of the Green Monster.
I've been up there. I think it's pretty high. If you did 20 feet, maybe that would be enough. I don't know what's happening on the other side of these walls, but 30 feet for the entire border, that seems insane. And then it has to be really 36 feet because they want to go 6 feet in the ground to prevent anybody from digging under, which I guess that works. But I don't know, something tells me if people are willing to dig 6 feet, they'll dig 7 feet too to get under. I don't know how much of reality that is.
6 feet doesn't seem all that deep. And honestly, the specifications on the proposals they're looking for, it seems like a bad joke, to be honest. I can't really take these things serious. The thought that they have to prove that they aren't susceptible to sledgehammers and pickaxes, and I can see in my head, I can see like cartoon characters like digging at this thing. It's like a bad movie.
I think the funniest part to me is that they want to make sure that it can prevent sophisticated climbing aids like grappling hooks. Like, are they trying to keep out Mexicans or Batman? Like, I don't know who's crossing over to the United States with a grappling hook. I don't understand. Are they superheroes?
Apparently.
I don't know. And then the funniest part is that, by the way, the north side of the wall must be aesthetically pleasing, so that when we look down towards Mexico to this wall, it's not an eyesore. It's not a 30-foot eyesore.
Right. We're going to bring Bob Ross back to paint some happy little trees on it.
I can just imagine them like painting the Mexican border so it just looks like you're looking into Mexico, even though it's a giant wall. It's a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. I'll just run right into it and smash into the wall. I don't know.
If only. I can't imagine. That's going to be something to see.
So we have $2.6 billion allocated towards that. Trump says it's going to cost like down to $12 billion, which of course Mexico will pay for. Some independent analysis, I saw CNBC today said $25 billion, but let's not forget that there's annual maintenance that could be as high as $750 million. So this is the gift that keeps on giving. And what's costing America more money? Illegal immigrants coming to our country, or $750 million to a wall that may or may not work?
Yeah, I'll take the independent analysis figure of 25 billion. I think that's probably a little bit closer to it. And, I don't know about you, but, again, we can look to our history here. And why don't we ask the Germans, about the upkeep of the little wall they had?
How long till like Mr. Trump tear down this wall?
I can hear it now.
I was going to say, speaking of Trump, but this entire podcast is about Donald Trump and his presidency. So I could say that at any given time, he, just when I think maybe someone took away his cell phone or his computer, he went and tweeted on it. He went nuts this morning, probably because he knew this stuff was going to be coming out at the Comey hearing, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. This morning he tweeted out, James Clapper and others stated that there's no evidence that POTUS colluded with Russia. The story is fake, and everyone knows it. And here's the funny thing: he wrote POTUS, like he didn't write capital P, capital O. He did POTUS like it was hey, Jim POTUS colluded with somebody. It's a guy. No, it's a petty comment, but it's not fake news when the CIA and the DOJ and the NSA, everybody's looking into it. I don't know.
I think the tweet that he made about the Democrats made up and pushed the Russian story as an excuse for running a terrible campaign. I'll give him that. The Dems could have done better. They neglected Middle America, and as a result, they paid for it with the election. But I think it's more than that. Flynn, Sessions, right? This has been proven. So I don't think it's just made up as a diversion.
These guys aren't like imaginary characters come to life through the imaginations of the Democrats. These people work for the Trump campaign. So yes, the Democrats in this last election, they probably got a little too complacent. I thought they had it in the bag too. I'll be the first person to say it, but that has nothing to do with the fact that people associated with the Trump campaign or on the Trump campaign were talking to people in Russia, and it's a known fact. It's not fake. And this president just spends so much time trying to basically gaslight everybody and just convince them that, what you know is truth is not truth. Why? Because I said so. And if you question me on it, I'm going to call you a liar.
And that's exactly what it is. And he wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't a percentage of the population, namely his supporters, that believe it.
It is. There's a group of people out there who are going to believe anything he says, no matter how ridiculous it is. I have a question for you concerning his next tweet.
Yeah, shoot.
He says that Congress and the FBI, they should all be looking into who leaked the classified information. They must find the leaker now. At what point do you think, it is against law to leak information? At what point does leaking information for the good of the country outweigh it possibly being illegal in your mind?
Well, this goes back to, we've had situations like this before. I mean, Watergate comes most readily to mind, but when there is something that is that credible of a piece of information that stands in the way of us being able to protect the United States, or has the ability to break something open that can preserve and protect this country, then I think that becomes tantamount. That's more important. In this case, that's kind of what we're dealing with here. We can't afford to have foreign nations meddling in our electoral process, whether or not they actually hacked into election machines, because I don't believe that they did. The fact that they were able to sway populace the way that they did is dangerous. It concerns me. So I think that if there's information that needs to get out, we're looking back on stuff much more important. Right. This is Pentagon Papers, 1967. This is important to do. That's why we have, while this may be illegal, this classified information being leaked, we also have laws to protect whistleblowers for this exact reason. When something is that important, I think that we need to make the exception for the good of the country.
I actually think you can be a patriot and a criminal at the same time. You can do something that's illegal for the right reasons and be praised for it, but then maybe have to face the music too. That was the question when Snowden came out with all his stuff, or Manning and all this stuff. Are they criminals, or do they do something because they thought it was right? And I actually think that both sides, to a certain degree, have legit points. I mean, there's WikiLeaks stuff. That's a whole nother story. Julian Assange. That guy is a nutcase, and he's dating Pamela Anderson now. He's like living in an embassy dating Pamela Anderson. I don't know.
Well, when have we ever known Pam Anderson to have been of sound mind?
Yeah, and I would never want to judge or harass anybody, but she's past her due date. This is in 1992, Pamela Anderson. And then the last thing here he tweeted was, what about the contact with the Clinton campaign and the Russians? Also, is it true that the DNC would now let the FBI in to look? All right, he just asked Twitter a question about what the DNC and the FBI. You're the president. You can just ask the FBI. Why are you asking Twitter? Again, he's putting out questions that I didn't accuse anybody. I just asked a question, and now everybody's going to take it and run.
Right, further proving that perhaps he was unprepared for the job if he doesn't even know that he's in charge of the FBI. But, who are we to judge?
Well, he got what he wanted, though, today, because today FBI Director Comey testified before the House Select Intelligence Committee. I watched it while I was at work. And the chairman, Devin Nunes, who, by the way, totally against my ideology, but the first office I ever applied and interviewed for a job for in Congress. I was like, just somebody hire me. And I was like, Congressman Nunes? It's Nunez. I'm like, oops. But anyways, he actually asked the question to Comey about the Clintons, and I mean, I had never heard of this before. It just seems like nonsense. What would they have to gain? They lost. Everything that came out was against the Clintons. It's just more blowing smoke up the butts.
So does this mean that James Comey has a guilty conscience?
Well, Comey pretty much is responsible for the situation we're in right now, especially because he said that. So let's back up a little bit. He did confirm that they're investigating Russia's effects on the elections, and that includes any possible connection between the Trump campaign / administration with Russia, and it's been going on since July. So that he was investigating, and he said, it's not a long time for this kind of thing. These things take time. But he's been investigating Trump's campaign's possible involvement with Russia since July, yet he felt the need to release a letter about Hillary Clinton's status, pretty much saying nothing, which possibly cost her the election. Comey, he screwed up big time, and it's not a partisan thing. It's just a fact that he sent out a letter that affected the outcome of the election, and it was not necessary to release that letter.
And in this situation, Donald Trump can't really afford to come out and discredit Director Comey, because he is, as you said, one of the major reasons why President Trump was elected, right? So Donald Trump can't come out and say, like, this guy is not to be believed, because you just relied on him less than 6 months ago to put you in the office that you hold.
Well, I actually disagree. I think Trump has no problem being like, he was right back then. He's an idiot now, though. Like, there's no sense of continuity in the way he thinks about things. It's whatever comes to mind just comes out. But the other thing that Comey said is that not only the FBI said this, the DOJ also agrees that there is no evidence of any kind of wiretapping, whatever you want to consider wiretapping to be, anywhere at Trump Tower. And it's funny, we'll talk about in a second, how the Trump administration looks at these two things and what they accept and what they don't. But so let's just recap. The head of the FBI said they are investigating possible Trump involvement with Russia and that they found no evidence of wiretapping. That's the head of the FBI saying this, with the DOJ, piggybacking that. That should be huge news, and Trump should be on his knees saying, I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen.
I don't expect to see that either, since he typically doubles down when information comes that makes him look wrong. But I think the overall thing to take away from this is that, you've got the Federal Bureau of Investigation coming out and saying that there is an investigation going on and there is no factual basis to support the idea that any wiretapping happened. And yet you still have the President of the United States refusing to concede here. That's, this is important. This is an important time in our history to understand that the president, for all the power he may have, can be wrong, and that facts always should come out on top. that facts matter.
Let's just be honest. He woke up grumpy one Saturday morning, tweeted something ridiculous, and now the ramifications are coming into our government, foreign governments. It's become a worldwide story and having effects worldwide. It's just crazy. And he already screwed up our relationship with Australia. And now America has a special relationship, they always say, with England, and they're now accusing the British intelligence agencies of wiretapping Trump on behalf of the Obama administration. I guess they apologized to them, but then kind of said no, we didn't apologize to them. It's just, and the relationship we have with Germany now, it's just a mess. And Spicer to me is right in the middle of all this. If last week I was in your house earlier this week or over the weekend doing my impression of Sean Spicer. He had a meltdown because I kept asking him. Everybody in the audience says there is no evidence of wiretapping. Will the president say he's sorry? And Spicer just freaks out. And I find it interesting that the press doesn't cover any of these pro-Trump stories. The president has made it clear that he didn't mean wiretapping and he didn't mean he was blaming Obama personally, even though that's exactly what he tweeted. That happens repeatedly. Then he starts reading all these stories from like Breitbart and Fox News and all these things to prove his point. And today they asked him, well, when you're reading these stories, does that mean that you're saying you vouch for these being correct? And Spicer was like, no, I'm just reading stories. They just basically try to filibuster to get their point across, and it's not going to last forever.
He's so concerned that the media doesn't cover stories that are pro-Trump, and yet he often quotes Breitbart or Fox News or these news outlets that are pro-Trump. And more importantly, the job of the press, while they should, when credit is to be given, should give the credit where it belongs, the job of the press is more important to point out the failures and to be critical of a presidential administration in the failures that it has and the mistakes that it makes, because that's our way. That's the medium by which we, the people, can hold our leaders accountable. Like, if we know what's going on, then how do we hold them accountable? And so the media is more responsible for being that critical eye.
Trump should have just said he was wrong a week ago and everybody would have moved on. But now it just becomes a story over and over and over again about basically what a lying. I won't even finish that statement because this is a family podcast, but he's a liar. And the reaction by Spicer to the Comey testimony, it's just funny the way they look at things. So the Trump-Russia connection has been investigated, and they haven't found any proof yet. It's ongoing. He basically says, it's completed. No one's found anything. End of story. But when it comes to the Obama wiretapping claims, it's been investigated, and no proof has been found, and they're pretty much done with that investigation. There's nothing there. And Spicer just goes, it's still ongoing. There's more to find. So he wants to just say, trust the lack of information in one area, but the lack of information somewhere else means there's still something out there. It's classic spicy is really what it is.
Classic spicy. And this is straight out of the book of, the adolescent that is trying to get out of trouble. Well, don't worry about what I did. Worry about what this guy did.
And today in the actual Comey hearing, one of the things a lot of the Republicans brought up was the unmasking of names regarding Russia. Like, why did people know that Flynn, why did his name come out? What are these people who had connections? Why was their name released? And Comey put out there when he was asked, he said that the Obama administration had the knowledge and the ability to unmask people like Loretta Lynch. Could have done that, but anybody in that position can do it. He wasn't accusing anybody. He's just saying, yes, there is a possibility somewhere in the world that they could do that. And Spicer then points it out like it's accusatory. Like, yes, they knew the names of these people, so obviously they did it. Wink, wink, wink. And that's very dangerous that you're putting things out there that have no basis in fact. It's just rumors and nonsense, really.
Well, and pointing out names can be dangerous, right? Need we go back to the Bush administration and the Valerie Plame fiasco that happened, where she was outed working as an agent in the Middle East. So I can understand their concern with outing of names, but again, when these things are so detrimental to national security, sometimes that outweighs the necessity to keep things classified.
And there's a difference between releasing somebody's name purely out of spite and doing it because it's part of the greater good. This person's in a high-ranking position in our government that could really affect. I mean, this is 80s Cold War spy stuff they're talking about now. And I read something online on Twitter. Someone gave this analogy, and I thought it was great. That what's going on right now is basically if the White House was on fire, Trump was running around with matches, and the Republicans were trying to figure out who called the firefighters, who called the police. Yeah, that's information that's possibly important, but it's not as important as what was released and what's going on right now. Deal with the forest fire first, then pay your parking ticket afterwards.
Yeah, in this case, the big
I don't know.
The big picture is much more important here.
And the last thing that Spicy did, I can't even handle it. Someone pointed out that yes, Trump has been playing golf. I think he's played golf 10 times in the last 8 weeks. And the reason they're bringing that up is that he was very critical of President Obama playing golf. He basically said, I'm never gonna leave the White House because I have too much work to do. And Spicer basically said, well, Trump uses that time better than Obama did. Trump uses that time to build relationships. So I guess Obama just said, screw being leader of the free world for 3 hours when he played golf. It's such a flimsy excuse.
Well, I think that President Trump must have meant I'm not going to leave the continental United States while I'm president, more so than the White House, because, again, trips to Mar-a-Lago are costing $3 million taxpayers' expense each time he goes. So, this is what we must be careful with the words we choose. But then again, Donald Trump doesn't do that.
By the way, I don't know if this is breaking news, but someone just sent me this, that Secretary of State Tillerson, who, by the way, does not like the media really, feels no need to have to talk to them, is skipping the first NATO meeting next month and is going to visit Russia instead. I don't know. There's got to be more to that. That seems ridiculous. If that's it, it's God. We'll have to look into that and talk about that more next time. But if that's true, that's just insanity. And finally today, what we want to talk about briefly, so Angela Merkel came and visited the United States last week. She is the German Chancellor, and what an odd video they released. So yes, they shook hands. She and President Trump shook hands earlier that day, but there's a scene in the Oval Office where everybody's taking pictures of them, and one of the photographers or reporter says, hey, can we get a handshake? And she looks at him and says, you want to shake hands? And he doesn't look at her, looks away almost, has this bizarre look on his face. I don't even know how to. I'm not even trying to be a partisan idiot here. It looked like it's bizarre. I can't explain the look on his face. Can you?
No, but it was, I agree, bizarre to watch him kind of stare into the camera without even acknowledging Angela Merkel's request for a handshake. Seems like a simple request between two world leaders, but again, this is new territory that we're in.
And it didn't help that earlier he brought up the fact that Obama had been listening in on her phone. That was a big deal. I mean, it hurt relationship between the United States and Russia for a while there, and he's just joking about it. And I think she was like, WTF? Like, what the? Whatever the German equivalent of that is, like, what is this dude talking about?
I don't think it's wise to make jokes about things like wiretapping with somebody who grew up in Cold War Germany. I'm pretty sure her connotation of wiretapping and her experience with that is a whole lot different than Donald Trump.
She dealt with the Russians firsthand as a child and knows why she's against a lot of the things they stood for because she lived it. I love some of the articles I was reading saying leader of the free world to meet with President Trump. They really are sticking it to him, but they're really polar opposites on a lot of things, and it's just going to be sad if this is one more. It's funny. I always joke about her relationship with Russia through the years and stuff because I was raised Jewish. Ha 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 ha. But no, really, in reality, we should have a close relationship with Germany now, and he's just going to destroy us across the world the way that people look at us, and it's really sad that I know people have had problems with how America is viewed across the world since 9/11 and the wars in Iraq and everything. But it sounds ridiculous, but we were once that shining beacon across the globe, and now we're the chumps that voted for President Trump. It's ridiculous.
And I know I've said it on previous episodes, but I'll say it again here: the idea that the president's words matter, that what he says and the ramifications across the globe of how other world leaders take him. Can they believe what he says? Do they take him literally? That has the potential to cause international incident and to certainly damage or destroy relationships that we have with allies that are currently our friends.
It kind of reminds me of the Dead Poet Society, where Rob Wien says, you know what? Words matter, language matters, and you can change the world, and it's so true. We joke about this, but when the president says something, you have to go with the president actually means that. If he does mean some of these things, it's crazy, and if he's just joking, that's crazy as well. And actually, he's gutless to a certain degree too. That once Merkel actually left, then he went on Twitter and started kind of bashing her, saying, "Oh yeah, we had a good meeting, but Germany still owes lots of money to NATO and the United States." Blah 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 blah. It's not how NATO works. There's like $2 billion in the operating budget, and it gets divided up not evenly to different countries. U.S. is first, Germany is actually second. And what he could complain about is that the countries are supposed to spend a certain amount of their gross national or gross domestic product on defense for NATO, and Germany and a lot of other countries like Italy and Canada haven't been doing that. But he did. He's basically acting like NATO is owned by the United States, and he's waiting there with a piggy bank for Merkel to come back and put some quarters in it. And it's, again, I just don't think he understands how these things work. I think he reads his one-page outlines that he likes with graphs and stuff, and doesn't want to get down in the weeds, and just tweets with basic knowledge of anything he talks about.
Well, NATO was established in the Cold War, post-World War II, on the premise that, Article 5 of an attack on one member country is an attack on all. And it started with 12 countries, now is up to 28. America, while we are the largest country and we do pay the largest portion of NATO's budget, we're not necessarily meant to be belligerent. We're used as a deterrent, not as a proactive defense of any one country. So to say that Germany owes us because we've been defending them for years. Well, actually, the last time Article 5 was invoked was on September 12, 2001, after the attacks on the United States, when the European members of NATO came to our defense. So maybe, after all, the United States owes Germany. And as you said, we pay a percentage of our gross national income. We pay 22% of NATO's budget, but Germany's not disproportionately far behind. They're paying 14%. France rolls in at 10%, and the United Kingdom right behind that at 9.8%. So these other countries are paying their fair share, or most other countries, I should say, are paying their fair share based on the percentage of the gross national income.
Now, September 12th, wasn't that when everybody in Jersey was celebrating 9/11, according to the president?
Right. Yeah. So all
those there's no video of these or no news reports of any of this, but
the Islamic militants in the streets of Bergen, New Jersey.
Oh man, I am spent with getting so worked up and getting so angry about all this stuff. I'm telling you, it's going to put me into an early grave. So before we can end this, and maybe to calm me down, can we bring us on over to Kevin's corner here and maybe end with some words of wisdom?
Well, sure. And I kind of like this now little segment of our show, and I'm happy to take that on. And hopefully I can calm you down and some of our listeners as well. I guess it's the teacher in me. So we talked tonight about the idea of building a wall. But building a wall on the border of the United States and Mexico is an inefficient fix to a much more global and pressing problem. Not all illegal immigrants are from Mexico or even Central America. And so building a wall along our border there won't stop the entirety of immigrants from coming here illegally. And as long as there's war, poverty, government corruption, crime, and persecution, there'll always be a desire to seek refuge in a democracy. And America has long been, in the words of Ronald Reagan and Jesse tonight, a shining city upon a hill whose beacon light guides freedom-loving people everywhere. So trying more diplomacy, helping nations improve themselves, and setting a standard of what freedom, democracy, and good governance really means will set a far more concrete barrier against illegal immigration than a wall ever will.
I think I can sleep well today. You've calmed me down. I feel better now. So now that everybody else is calm, remember you can go to our Twitter page at Grab by the Pod. Give us some tweets. Tell us what you think. We have a page on Facebook, too. You can find us there. Just search Grab Them by the Pod. Of course, you can send us an email at grabthembythepod@gmail.com. And we're on iTunes. We're on YouTube. As someone joked the other day when I said this, but we're on all Android platforms. You can find us anywhere. We're pretty much anywhere there's a podcast, you can find us. And we've been noticing we've been growing by this. Our listeners have been growing by the week and by the episode. And it feels good to have more and more people on board. And I'm looking forward to the next crop we'll get over the next week. Whether you love us or hate us, I want to hear it either way. It'll be fantastic. If people feel passionate about us, that's important. And if they're passionate enough to complain about us, we know what? That means we invoked some kind of emotion in them. And I think that's a success.
I'll take it.
And on that note, we'll see you next time.
Later.
Thank you.